Hello fight fans, thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting off, Daniel Cormier thinks Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler could make history in more than one way. Moving on, Aljamain Sterling labels his performance at UFC 300 as the most dominant. Next, MMA fans slam Iranian fighter who hit ring girl. Moving on, Conor's coach claims Conor is in the best form ever. Lastly, Weidman interested in facing Shawn Strickland after recent win. UFC Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier thinks Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler could make history in more than one way. McGregor will make his long-awaited UFC return at UFC 303 against Chandler on June 29th. He and Chandler will finally meet in the octagon after they clashed as opposing coaches on The Ultimate Fighter 31 last year. McGregor versus Chandler is expected to be one of the biggest fights of 2024. McGregor hasn't fought since suffering a leg injury at UFC 264, and Chandler hasn't competed since a loss to Dustin at UFC 281. During McGregor and Chandler's hiatus, conversations surrounding weight cutting and potentially adding new UFC divisions have ramped up. But Cormier believes that McGregor versus Chandler should be for a belt, and that UFC 303 would be an ideal opportunity to introduce a new weight class. Daniel Cormier explained why launching a 165 pounds division with McGregor versus Chandler makes sense. Here is what he said. I believe that if they're going to do a 165 pounds division, it should have a name attached to the weight class that is so big that it draws people's attention, Conor McGregor being that name. Michael Chandler, on the other hand, will benefit from being in the right place at the right time, whereas these guys would then fight for the super lightweight championship. That's what I believe it is, and it's only 10 pounds heavier than 155. Move 170 to 175, move 185 to 195, keep 205, keep heavyweight. The UFC hasn't added a new weight class since the addition of the women's featherweight division. The division was closed last year following Amanda Nunes' retirement. McGregor versus Chandler will be contested at 170 pounds. Cormier's comments aren't necessarily an indication of a pending UFC announcement, but McGregor versus Chandler could feature more than solely bragging rights on the line. Aljamain Sterling labels his performance at UFC 300 as the most dominant. Sterling outgrappled Calvin Kattar en route to a lopsided, unanimous decision win, making good on his featherweight debut. Calvin only landed 19 total strikes in the fight, was taken down 8 times, and was controlled for over 10 minutes. The former bantamweight champion is aware his fight may have not been the most crowd-pleasing. Here is what he said. Don't get me wrong, our fight on that particular night of UFC 300 was not the most entertaining, but it was the most dominant fight I think you could have possibly looked at from the entire card from top to bottom. MMA fighter Ali Heibati has been handed a lifetime ban after attacking a ring girl ahead of a fight. The Iranian was competing in the hard-fighting championship promotion when the incident unfolded. Just moments before the bout was about to begin, a ring girl named Maria entered the cage to signal that the first round was commencing. As she turned her back on him to leave the cage, Heibati bafflingly kicked out at her. She then turned to confront Heibati, who was then reprimanded by the referee. After the bout, Heibati took to social media to apologize to the ring girl. This is what he wrote. Hello everyone, this is for Maria. I didn't act right with her. The reason was that before the MMA fight there were a lot of fist fights. I stayed there in the cage and I just wanted to go out and fight. I was tense, and as most understand, emotions flourish in the fight, so before the fight I acted badly towards Maria. I want to publicly apologize to her. I am a married man, so I respect the female gender. She was doing her job, and I, after the fight, didn't admit my guilt either, because they also hit me on the head. Tell Maria that I am sorry. Despite his apology, it proved insufficient as the organization he competed for terminated his contract and imposed a lifetime ban on his participation. The incident sparked a mixed reaction among MMA enthusiasts. Some expressed support for the fighter, while others voiced their condemnation. Here's a look at what they said. We really don't need scantily clad women in the ring for everyone to stare at. It's just not right for women. That's not how you show respect. Imagine a kid seeing that. He was probably just trying to make a point about her not walking around nearly naked near him. Now that there's so much hype around this fighter, Dana White should bring him to the UFC to fight. It would draw a big audience, set him up with someone who can beat him. It's a win-win situation for everyone. Disgraceful behavior. He should be suspended so that he can't fight in any organization because this is shameful. He hit a woman, and that is a line that should never be crossed. Unlike these cavemen, we respect our women. Too much fuss is being made about this. He didn't actually hit her, just gave her a slight scratch on the butt. He doesn't deserve a ban at all. Give the man a second chance. This isn't a hit at all. This is unacceptable behavior towards women. This is how they've been taught in their countries where women have no rights. In the civilized world, women must be respected, and if he is in America, he should be immediately sent back to Iran to behave as he has learned there. Following a momentous night of fights at UFC 300, Dana White dropped some equally important news. UFC megastar Conor McGregor would make his long-awaited return at UFC 303 against Michael Chandler. The fight announcement has been long awaited, and there were some doubts that McGregor would never sign on the dotted line and step back in the octagon. But with contracts locked in and a June 29, 2024 now date in place, Conor is back to training hard at the Straight Blast gym in Dublin. Head coach John Kavanagh recently spoke with Irish MMA media outlet and shared his thoughts on how McGregor is performing after such a long layoff. Here is what he said. He's looking super slick. He's come back on the mats as sharp as ever. Of course, we've got to get the rounds in and get the conditioning up so as to be ready for competition, but his technique is as sharp as ever. I see similarities to the Chad Mendes fight. I'd be surprised if it can go 2 rounds. I'd be surprised he just hits too hard, he's too sharp. Is there gonna be scrappiness and takedown stuff? Maybe. But every round starts on the feet, and his ability to get back there is underestimated. So I'd be surprised if we see 2 rounds. Former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman is down to face Shawn Strickland next. Chris returned to the octagon late last month in Atlantic City against Bruno Silva. Chris entered the bout admittedly on the verge of retirement. With a loss, the former UFC champion would have retired in the cage. Instead, Chris picked up a controversial unanimous decision victory over the Brazilian. The bout was originally a knockout win, but was changed to a decision after several eye pokes happened in the finishing sequence. In the weeks since that victory, Chris has been quiet. However, in a recent interview with Michael Bisping, he discussed a future fight against Strickland. Shawn Strickland was recently booked for the UFC 302 co-main event against Paulo Costa. Win or lose, however, Chris would be interested in facing the former champion next. While the 39-year-old is aware that he's had a lot of losses and injuries lately, he believes that he can contend with the likes of Shawn Strickland. Here is what he said. I think I want a big name. I've got a lot of respect for Strickland, and I think it would be a fun build-up. I think he would bring me out of being such a nice guy. We could trash talk a little bit and have some fun. I would love that fight. I like his style. I like that he pushes the pace. I like to push the pace. He likes to get guys tired, so I'd like to test myself against a guy like that. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.